It's funny how life can turn on a single moment, isn't it? For me, that moment came last Saturday morning at exactly 10:15 a.m. I remember checking my watch as I pulled into the driveway, heart pounding with excitement. After 5 grueling years of working overtime, skipping lunches, and grinding away at a job that never seemed to appreciate me, I finally got my first bonus, $5, 800. It wasn't just money, it was validation. Proof that all those late nights and early mornings had meant something. And so, when Madison mentioned wanting to visit her mom more often, I thought, this is it. This is my chance to do something meaningful, to show her I care. I spent 2 weeks researching cars, scrolling through listings until my eyes hurt. Drove 8 different ones before finding the one. A 2014 sedan, clean title, low mileage, reliable enough for Madison to drive the 40 miles out to her mom's house whenever she wanted. At $4,200, it was perfect, not flashy, but dependable. Practical. Exactly what we needed. When I parked it in the driveway, I felt like a hero. Like I'd just handed her the keys to freedom itself. But then, everything went sideways. Madison walked out in her pajamas, coffee mug in hand, and laughed. Not a happy laugh. A cutting, dismissive laugh that made my stomach drop. Didn't know bonuses came with embarrassment packages, she said, tossing the keys back at me like they were hot coals. The words hit harder than I expected them to. My neighbor Atlas, washing his truck across the street, pretended not to notice, but I could see him glance over. Humiliation burned in my chest. Here I was, standing in our driveway, thinking I'd done something good, only to be mocked for it. What stung most wasn't just her reaction. It was the realization that she didn't value my effort. To her, this bonus wasn't a reward for sacrifice. It was an expectation. Something owed, not earned. And maybe that's why, later that night, while Madison scrolled through social media ignoring me, I started questioning everything. Was I invisible to her? Was all my hard work just background noise in our marriage? Those questions haunted me as I lay awake at 3:47 a.m., staring at the ceiling. Little did I know, the answers would come crashing down faster than I ever imagined. The moment Madison stepped out of the house, still in her pajamas with a coffee mug dangling from her fingers, I knew something was off. Her lips curled into a smirk as she glanced at the car, then at me, and back to the car again. Didn't know bonuses came with embarrassment packages, she said, her voice dripping with mockery. The words hit me like a punch to the gut, but before I could respond, she tossed the keys at me, hard enough that they clattered against my chest and fell to the ground. Take it back, she spat. You drive it. It matches your face. Her laughter echoed in my ears as I bent down to pick up the keys, my cheeks burning with humiliation. What made it worse? Our neighbor, Atlas, was washing his truck across the street. He paused mid-scrub, pretending not to notice, but I caught him glancing over. His awkward half-wave felt more like pity than acknowledgement. I forced a smile, trying to play it cool, but inside, I was seething. Here I stood, thinking I'd done something thoughtful, only to be humiliated in front of our entire neighborhood. Madison didn't stop there. As soon as she went back inside, I heard her phone ring. A few minutes later, she stormed out again, pacing on the porch while talking loudly to her mom. Can you believe this? She exclaimed, her tone sharp and theatrical. He bought me some junker car that looks like it's held together by duct tape. It's embarrassing. She exaggerated every detail, describing the sedan as if it were a rusted heap of metal about to fall apart. Meanwhile, Atlas kept sneaking glances, his expression unreadable. I wanted to disappear. But what hurt most wasn't just her reaction. It was how quickly she dismissed everything I'd worked for. That bonus wasn't just money. It represented years of sacrifice, late nights, and skipped meals. And yet, to her, it meant nothing. Her callousness stung deeper than any insult. By the time she hung up with her mom, slamming the door behind her, I realized something unsettling. Madison hadn't even asked why I bought the car or considered how much thought I'd put into choosing it. To her, it was just another opportunity to criticize me. That night, as I lay awake staring at the ceiling, Atlas's subtle shake of the head replayed in my mind. Was he judging me, or her? Either way, I couldn't escape the feeling that I'd been reduced to a punchline. The car sat untouched in the driveway, gleaming under the moonlight, a silent witness to the chaos unfolding in our marriage. Little did I know, This was only the beginning of a storm that would test us both in ways neither of us expected. By midnight, I was sitting at the kitchen table with a stack of papers, receipts, and bank statements spread out before me like evidence in a crime scene. My hands trembled as I scrolled through our joint account, line by line, trying to make sense of how we'd ended up here. Madison's mocking laughter from earlier that day echoed in my mind, but now it felt heavier, like a weight pressing down on my chest. What started as curiosity about her spending habits turned into something far worse, a financial nightmare I hadn't seen coming. The first red flag? 3 hidden credit cards. Not 1, not 2, but 3. Each maxed out, totaling $11,400 in debt. Debt she had never mentioned. Debt we were legally responsible for because she'd used both our names to secure them. How could she do this without telling me? And then there was the secret savings account, a tidy little stash of $2,700 that should have been going toward our shared expenses. Instead, it sat untouched while I struggled to cover 80% of our bills every month. My blood boiled when I realized what she'd been doing with that money. Designer clothes, $3,240. Hair appointments, $1,675. Solo lunches at fancy restaurants, $890. And gifts for herself, $2,130. All while I wore the same 5 shirts I'd owned since 2018. But the real bombshell came when I found the loan agreement. Madison had taken out a personal loan of $10,000 6 months ago, using our house as collateral. The terms were brutal. If we missed another payment, the bank could start foreclosure proceedings. Panic surged through me as I read the fine print. We were already behind on payments. The next one, $3,000, was due in 2 weeks. 2 weeks. Where would I even get that kind of money? As if on cue, the doorbell rang at 8:17 a.m. the next morning. I opened it to find a man in a suit holding a clipboard. "Are you Richard?" he asked, his tone cold and professional. Behind him stood a car with debt recovery services emblazoned on the side. My stomach dropped. He handed me a notice, $3,000 overdue or face legal action. I could feel Atlas peeking over from his driveway again, pretending to water his lawn, but clearly eavesdropping. Humiliation washed over me. This wasn't just about money anymore. It was about survival. Our home, everything we'd built together, was at risk because of Madison's recklessness. That night, I confronted her. "Do you realize what you've done?" I snapped, slamming the loan agreement onto the table. She flinched but quickly recovered, brushing it off as just a small oversight. A small oversight? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Meanwhile, the clock ticked closer to disaster. Every unanswered call from debt collectors, every email reminder, felt like a countdown to losing everything. Sleep became impossible. At 3:47 a.m., I lay awake staring at the ceiling, replaying the debt collector's visit in my head. The image of that clipboard haunted me, a symbol of how fragile our lives really were. And yet, despite the chaos, I knew I had to take control. Sitting there in the dark, I made a decision. No more enabling her behavior. No more sacrificing myself for someone who didn't value my efforts. The car outside, the one she mocked, wasn't just a gift anymore. It was a test. A test of whether Madison could step up and take responsibility or continue living in denial. Little did I know, this was only the beginning of a storm that would shake us both to our cores. Sunday morning came, and I woke up before sunrise, the weight of my decision pressing down on me like a boulder. Madison was still asleep. She always slept late, but I knew this day would change everything between us. My hands trembled as I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the car keys and title I'd left there the night before. The sedan gleamed outside, freshly washed and waxed, but it felt less like a gift now and more like a symbol of reckoning for both of us. Before taking the final step, I hesitated. What if this destroyed us? What if Madison walked out for good? She had already threatened divorce once during one of our heated arguments last week. "You'll regret this," she'd hissed, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. "No judge will side with you when they see how controlling you are." Her words echoed in my mind now, making my chest tighten. Was I being too harsh? Too cold? But then I remembered something my mother used to say. "Don't let anyone make you feel worthless." Those words hit me harder than ever that morning, grounding me in what I needed to do. I opened my laptop and began transferring funds. First, I moved my portion of next month's bills into our joint account, just enough to cover essentials. Then, I transferred every remaining dollar from my personal savings into a new account I'd opened at a different bank. As I typed in the final digits, a wave of relief washed over me, followed by an equally intense surge of fear. This wasn't just about money anymore. It was about reclaiming control of my life. Madison's mocking laughter from the driveway replayed in my head, the way she tossed those keys back at me like they were worthless. That image fueled my resolve. By 7:32 a.m., I was ready. I placed the signed title and keys on the counter with a note. "It's yours. Paid in full. Insurance covered for 6 months." Beneath it, I added another line. "Use it or don't, but it's time we both faced reality." Before leaving for work, I temporarily blocked Madison's number. Not permanently, but for 8 hours, just to give myself space to think without distraction. By lunchtime, I'd contacted a financial advisor and documented every contribution I'd made over the past 2 years. Each receipt, each transaction, became proof of how lopsided our relationship had become. That evening, when I got home, Madison acted like nothing had changed. She asked what was for dinner as though this were any other day. But the car keys remained untouched on the counter, and the tension in the air was suffocating. For the first time in years, I didn't feel invisible. I felt powerful. Yet, the battle was far from over. Madison's silence spoke volumes, and I knew her reaction would come sooner rather than later. Still, sitting alone in the basement that night, I couldn't help but wonder if I'd pushed her too far, or not far enough. By the time I got home from work that evening, my phone was buzzing nonstop. Texts, calls, voiced messages, all from Madison. At first, her messages were angry, accusing me of financial abuse and cutting her off without warning. She claimed she couldn't pay for anything. No groceries, no gas, not even her $12 Spotify subscription. It wasn't until later that night, when her tone shifted from rage to panic, that things really escalated. At 9:47 p.m., she called her sister, the one she'd been secretly sending money to, and begged for help. I overheard her side of the conversation through the closed bedroom door. "It's an emergency," she pleaded, her voice trembling. "Just this once, please?" Whatever her sister said on the other end clearly didn't satisfy her, because Madison slammed the phone down in frustration. Her next move? Calling Net, her best friend. From what I could gather, Madison spun a dramatic story about how controlling I'd become, painting herself as the victim of my sudden cruelty. But here's the kicker. Neither her sister nor Net came to her rescue. When Madison showed up at Net's house late that night, driving my car, ironically, Net refused to let her in. According to Net, who texted me afterward, probably out of guilt, Madison had been lying about our financial situation for years, claiming I monitored every penny she spent. The truth hit Net hard. She stopped responding to Madison's frantic texts altogether. Meanwhile, Madison sat in the driveway outside Net's house for nearly an hour, staring at her phone like it might explode. Eventually, she drove back home, defeated. The next morning, Madison tried again. This time, she left before dawn, presumably heading to her mom's place. But when she returned hours later, empty-handed and visibly shaken, I knew something had gone wrong. It turned out her mom hadn't answered the door either. She'd already left for a 6-week cruise with her boyfriend. Madison stood in the kitchen, tears streaming down her face, yelling at me for ruining her life. "You've made everyone hate me," she screamed, throwing a mug against the wall. Shards of ceramic scattered across the floor, but I didn't flinch. What struck me most wasn't her anger. It was the desperation in her eyes. For the first time, Madison faced the consequences of her actions. No safety net, no one rushing to bail her out. And yet, instead of taking responsibility, she doubled down, blaming me for everything. The irony was almost poetic. The woman who mocked the car now depended on it to beg for help, from people who no longer trusted her. The sound of the doorbell at 5:47 a.m. shattered the fragile silence that had settled over our home. I opened the door to find Madison's mother standing there, her face pale and drawn from what must have been a grueling 4-hour drive. She had canceled the first leg of her 6-week cruise, something she'd been looking forward to for months, to come straight to us after receiving a frantic call from Madison at 2 a.m. "What on earth is going on here?" she demanded, brushing past me into the house. Madison was still sitting at the kitchen table where I'd left her an hour earlier, her head buried in her hands. Her mother stopped short when she saw her, taking in the messy hair, puffy eyes, and crumpled clothes. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Madison burst out, tears streaming down her face, accusing me of financial abuse and emotional manipulation. Her voice trembled as she described how I'd cut her off and forced her to face reality alone. Her mother listened quietly, but her expression hardened when I handed her the laptop with all the financial documents prepared. Spreadsheets detailing hidden credit card debts, secret savings accounts, extravagant spending habits, all laid bare before her. As she scrolled through the evidence, her lips pressed into a thin line. At one point, she paused, staring at a specific entry. Regular transfers totaling $2,400 sent to her own account over the past year. Transfers Madison had never mentioned. "You've been sending me money?" she asked sharply, turning to Madison. Behind his back? Madison stammered, trying to explain, but her mother cut her off. "Do you even know how hard he works? How much he sacrifices?" she snapped. "This isn't just about money. It's about respect. About honesty." Then came the blow that hit hardest. "You're acting just like your father," she said, her voice cold and steady. The room fell silent. Madison flinched as if slapped. Her father, a man who had abandoned their family when Madison was just 8 years old, had always been a sore subject. To hear herself compared to him was devastating. Her mother didn't stop there. Pacing the kitchen, she recounted stories of struggles she faced raising Madison alone, working double shifts while keeping food on the table. "I taught you better than this," she said, shaking her head. "I didn't raise you to lie, cheat, and take advantage of someone who loves you." By the time she finished, both Madison and I were speechless. Her mother hugged me briefly before leaving, telling Madison, "Call me when you've figured out what really matters." As the door closed behind her, Madison sat frozen, staring at the stack of papers on the table. For the first time, I saw genuine shame in her eyes. But beneath it lingered something else, a flicker of resolve. It wasn't redemption yet, but it was a start. It was Monday morning, exactly 3 weeks after the financial reckoning began, when I noticed something different about Madison. She wasn't just tidying up, she was cleaning with a level of intensity one hadn't seen since we moved into this house 5 years ago. The bathroom grout gleamed, the kitchen cabinets sparkled, and even the baseboards were dust-free. On the counter lay a stack of papers, her credit card statements, handwritten payment plans, and a budget worksheet she'd printed from some financial planning website. For the first time in years, she seemed proactive. But the real test came later that week when Madison announced she'd be driving the sedan to work for the first time. "I figured it's about time," she muttered, avoiding eye contact as she adjusted the rearview mirror. I offered to show her how to connect her phone to Bluetooth and explain the car's features, the backup camera, the surprisingly decent sound system, and the trunk space. She listened quietly, nodding occasionally, but there was still an undercurrent of tension between us. The next day, my phone buzzed at 8:17 a.m. It was Madison, her voice trembling on the line. "There's been an accident." My heart sank. When I arrived at the scene, I found her standing beside the car, visibly shaken. A small dent marred the front bumper where she'd accidentally hit a curb while trying to parallel park. Her hands clenched the steering wheel so tightly I thought they might leave marks. "Are you mad?" she whispered, tears welling up in her eyes. To her surprise, and perhaps mine, I didn't yell or criticize. Instead, I walked her through what had gone wrong, explaining how to judge distances better and suggesting she practice in an empty parking lot over the weekend. As I worked on fixing the damage later that evening, Madison hovered nearby, watching intently. At one point, she handed me tools without being asked, her movements hesitant but genuine. That moment felt like a turning point. For the first time, she saw me not as the enemy holding her accountable, but as someone willing to guide her, even after everything. By Friday, Madison had canceled her Miami trip, returned several unopened online purchases, and started cutting back on personal expenses. She even joked about naming the car Reality Check because it forced her to face consequences head-on. Though we were far from perfect, I could see glimmers of hope. Maybe redemption wasn't out of reach after all. It was a Tuesday morning when Madison approached me, her voice trembling slightly. "I scheduled the first counseling session," she said, avoiding my eyes. For Friday. I nodded, surprised by how much effort she'd put into making it happen. She'd even booked the appointment under her name and offered to drive us there in her car. The irony wasn't lost on me. The same woman who once mocked the sedan now treated it like an extension of herself. Still, this small act felt monumental, a step toward rebuilding what we'd broken. That evening, as I sorted through mail at the kitchen table, Madison walked in holding a velvet jewelry box. She hesitated before placing it on the counter between us. I thought, maybe I could sell some of these, she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper, to help with the debt. For a moment, I just stared at her. Those pieces were expensive, gifts from birthdays, anniversaries, and holidays past. Selling them meant more than just financial sacrifice. It was symbolic, a gesture of accountability. I'm proud of you, I said finally, breaking the silence. Her head snapped up, eyes wide with disbelief. Really? She asked, her voice cracking. I nodded, adding, it takes courage to face your mistakes head on. That night, after she left the room, I opened the box and examined the contents. Diamond earrings, a gold bracelet engraved with our initials, a necklace I'd saved months to buy. Each piece carried memories, but they also represented the imbalance in our marriage. The way Madison had clung to material comforts while ignoring deeper issues. The next day, Madison sold nearly $3,000 worth of jewelry. When she showed me the receipt, her hands shook. Do you think it's enough? She asked. Enough for forgiveness? No, but enough to start earning back trust? Maybe. As we stood there, side by side, I realized something. Relationships aren't rebuilt overnight. They're pieced together slowly, one brave decision at a time. And for the first time in years, I felt hope flicker between us. 3 months have passed since that chaotic Saturday morning when Madison first mocked the car. And though our marriage is far from perfect, we're trying. Really trying. Counseling sessions have become a weekly ritual, sometimes productive, sometimes painful, but always necessary. We've started talking about things we haven't discussed in years: trust, respect, and even the small gestures that used to make us smile. But beneath the surface, there's still an undercurrent of uncertainty. Are we rebuilding something real, or just delaying the inevitable? The turning point came one evening when I stumbled upon a folder labeled Emergency Documents on Madison's desk. Inside was a draft of divorce papers, already filled out, dated 2 weeks after her mother's visit. My stomach dropped as I flipped through them. Every line felt like a punch to the gut. When I confronted her, she didn't deny it. Instead, she looked me straight in the eye and said, I wasn't sure you'd fight for us. I needed a backup plan. Her honesty stung more than any lie could have. I took a deep breath and explained why I understood her fear, but disagreed with her approach. This isn't about control, I told her. It's about protecting both of us if things fall apart completely. If you want security, fine, I'll prepare my own documents too. But don't mistake preparation for giving up. That night, we sat together at the kitchen table, drafting legal safeguards neither of us hoped to use. It was heartbreaking, yes, but also oddly liberating. For the first time, we were facing reality head-on, not running from it. Meanwhile, the sedan has taken on a life of its own. Madison officially named it Reality Check, a fitting reminder of everything we've been through. She washes it every weekend, adds little touches like air fresheners shaped like pine trees, and jokes about how reliable it's become compared to her old habits. Our neighbor Atlas now greets her warmly whenever she drives by, often complimenting the car's upkeep. Even Madison's mom called last week to say she misses seeing the sedan parked in the driveway during her visits. As I sit here typing this update, I can't help but wonder, will we survive this? Can love truly conquer 8 years of financial imbalance and emotional neglect? The truth is, I don't know. What I do know is that we're no longer hiding behind excuses or pretending everything's okay when it's not. Whether we stay together or part ways, one thing is certain. That car, a symbol of accountability and growth, will always remind us of where we've been and what we've learned. And maybe, just maybe, that's enough. As I sit here reflecting on everything that's happened, one truth stands out. Facing reality is painful, but necessary. For years, I let Madison's reckless spending slide because I thought avoiding conflict was the key to keeping our marriage intact. But silence isn't peace, it's a ticking time bomb. When she mocked the car I bought, a gift meant to bring her independence, I realized how far we drifted from mutual respect. The journey since then has been anything but easy, filled with sleepless nights, heated arguments, and moments where giving up seemed like the only option. The turning point came when Madison enrolled herself in a personal finance course, something I never expected. She announced it during breakfast one morning, sliding a printed syllabus across the table. "I'm setting a goal," she said firmly. $10,000 saved in 2 years. No excuses. Her voice carried a determination I hadn't heard in years. At first, I was skeptical. Was this another fleeting promise, or was she truly ready to change? But as weeks turned into months, I saw proof of her commitment. She started tracking every dollar, cutting unnecessary expenses, and even negotiated lower rates on some bills. One evening, while reviewing her progress, she handed me a binder labeled Financial Goals. Inside were detailed spreadsheets, savings milestones, and handwritten notes about lessons learned from her course. "I want you to hold me accountable," she said, meeting my eyes for the first time in what felt like forever. That moment hit me harder than any apology could have. It wasn't just about numbers. It was about trust rebuilding itself, brick by brick. Still, I remain cautious. Trust broken takes time to mend, and old habits die hard. Yet, there's no denying the shift in Madison. She now jokes about naming her budgeting app Freedom Fighter, instead of relying on impulse buys for happiness. Even Atlas noticed, commenting on how polished the sedan looked after she washed it last weekend. "Looks like someone's taking responsibility seriously," he teased, giving her a thumbs up. In the end, this story isn't just about us. It's about learning that growth often comes through discomfort. Sometimes, love means stepping back and letting someone stumble before they stand tall. Madison may not be perfect, but she's trying, and maybe, just maybe, that's enough.